Hello and welcome to Creative Warrior. This is a Creative Warrior chat where we talk to creators out there fighting for their creativity. Today, we are talking to Stefanie Gilmour. Stefanie is a graphic designer who enjoys creepy and fantastical stories. Her short fiction has been published in The Quiet Ones literary magazine, and her debut novel, Fear the Wolf, Alex Steward Book 1, is available right now on Amazon, and we'll talk about that in all the places that you can get it. Welcome, Stefanie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about all things creativity, but to do that, let's talk a little bit about your origin story. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started writing, and how you ended up with Alex Steward.
So in 2016, someone I know, Alison Spooner, was in Grand Rapids, and she started a fiction writing group, Fiction 440, where you had to write a flash fiction story in 440 words or less using 3 prompts. I had not done any creative writing since high school, and I was a ways out of high school by then. And so I went to a few with my husband, who was her coworker at the time, and I fell in love with writing again. I really love the short form and just exploring a concept in a shorter fiction form. And so I got more into writing again, creative writing. And then around, it was 2016, if I remember that correctly, I read a book by Kitty Anthony. It was a collection of short stories called Feminist Werewolf. And I got this idea in my head about because this book was a collection of short stories that discussed her life growing up as a woman and as a mother, as a wife, and just different things that entails, different joys and stresses that can bring. And so I thought to myself, what would happen if you were an actual werewolf, though? If you were a woman experiencing these feelings in life, but you had to also hide your identity as a werewolf. And so I always loved urban fantasy, which are fantastical elements in a modern setting. And it just wouldn't go away. The idea stuck in my head. And so for 2019 National Novel Writing Month, I drafted the story. And then, and now in 2023, her first story is out with at least 2 more on the way.
Oh, yay. That's so exciting. I love hearing that I was able to help somebody spark inspiration.
Yes.
Just a side note, I did not create Fiction 440, just to put that out there. That was created here in another city in Michigan, but I just took it with me because I missed it so much.
Championed it on the west side of Michigan.
Yes, when I moved. So kudos to the people that started it here. Okay, so you mentioned that you got back into writing and kind of rediscovered a love for it. Was this something that you were interested in when you were young, like just reading a lot or writing a lot? Did you write when you were little?
Yes. I wrote, I wish I could remember what the story was about, but I did enter a book into the Young Authors competition in elementary school, and my book won. So I got to go meet a few authors, and that was just amazing. And I've always been a bookworm. I usually, throughout my entire life, have read science fiction and fantasy. And then into my teen years, got more into the horror genre, with Pet Sematary scaring me, but I loved it so much. And so those are my three genres. And I wrote in high school a bit, creative writing. We wrote a little bit for class, but then when I got into college, I started focusing more on my education in graphic design. And there was just so much work to do for that. It was a pretty competitive program, pretty intense, that I didn't make time for creative writing then. And so I rediscovered it with Fiction 440, and just really enjoy crafting and telling stories again, and using story to explore different concepts and ideas about life in general, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I like hearing that, like, it's not too late. I think too many people think like, oh, I got out of it and now it's too late to go back, or,
right.
I gave it up and now I can't go back. I've got this other life. But it sounds like there's always time.
Yes. And it was a really great, I found out that it was a really great hobby too for managing anxiety, depression, and just like general mental health. It just was very therapeutic for me in that way too. So it's great. it's fabulous.
And you can see that a little in Alex. I think we won't give too much away for people that want to read, but was writing her also a little therapeutic? I feel like maybe she does some things that that we all want to do.
Yes, my Lady Werewolf. She I usually, the titles that I come to are Rachel Harrison's Such Sharp Teeth, which she released in October of 2021. And then also there was a television series recently, I think last year as well, by Jessica Gao, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. And so, yes, it was just, after like containing those feelings and presenting yourself as you're brought up to think that you should, and how sometimes that doesn't necessarily work with how humans work and what you're feeling inside. And so, yeah, it was very therapeutic, right, Alex? And talk about stress relief. No, and actually really funny too, because it was really interesting to describe this book to people, and a lot of women, just like something kind of came on in their eyes, like it lit up, like, oh yes, I think she's a really relatable protagonist for being a supernatural being, I guess.
Yeah, and there haven't been a ton of, if I'm right, a ton of women werewolves.
Right.
Before
right.
that.
No, there have been, there were a couple around the time urban fantasy was at its peak at between 2000 and 2010, I think. There were a few protagonists in some long-running series, but that was pretty much it. And then usually it was like a demure second to male alpha werewolf, where Alex is a little bit more of a strong personality. Yeah. She's strong and messy and wonderful. So
which is surprising that there haven't been more, right? Because the way we think about women and the things, we go through and
yeah, right,
are very werewolf-ish, I guess.
Yeah, no, well, think of motherhood alone, right? It's like there's the mama bear, like there's and yeah, everything. Yeah, it's
the literal change in body, yeah.
Exactly. I had a lot of fun with that too, because the werewolf trope in general has been used a lot through literature for exploring, and it's usually, there are a lot of stories that like Teen Wolf, right, where you are transitioning from a young you growing into an adult you. And that's transition. There's just the morphing of the body, and you have control of it. And there's just, it's been played, that trope is really nice to explore. Yeah, who you are and who you're becoming because of that transformation.
Well, so Alex is out there. This is your first novel, published debut novel, and you are self-publishing.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that thought process, maybe what eventually led you down that path? And we'll talk a little about the specifics of the path, but how did you end up choosing the self-publishing path?
First I tried to query the book I tried to go the traditional publication route first, because I thought, either way, why don't we try this first, and then self-publishing is an option for me. So I queried for about 1.5 years and collected a letter, like a pile of rejection letters, which is really rough as a creative, especially because you write your story, or as an artist or creative person, you're putting yourself into this work. And so it's very challenging sometimes to separate yourself from that, you as a person, from your work, because you put so much of yourself into it. I collected a lot of rejection letters, and I finally, through a competition where I was looking for a mentor, another author, I ran into an urban fantasy author, another one, and she is published with a independent press, a smaller press. And she was super generous and gave me a bit of her time and told me, you know, I don't think the industry right now, the big four publishers, traditional publishing houses, they're not buying urban fantasy at all. So unless you're that author who is big from when it was at its height earlier in the 2000s, Jim Butcher, Patricia Briggs, you're not going to get a publishing contract. And I really appreciate her saying that. It was very heartbreaking because it can get expensive. Even though self-publishing, I think, is within reach, and you can get a really nice product out of it without having too much money invested. It's money that you have to save and invest in the project. So that kind of stunk. But I appreciate she did it so that I could then move on. And while I was querying that one book, I continued to write. And I actually had an editor tell me, well, don't write the other stories until you know you're going to sell your first one. And so then I learned about the whole concept of, if you are writing a series, if you get traditionally published for your series and the first book doesn't sell, they won't publish the rest, any other stories, because they didn't make their money back on that first book. Yet they still have creative rights with that story and will hold on to it. So you're not allowed to take the series and publish any other ones until it's backlisted and then finally released from your contract. So I thought, wow, no, that's not going to work for me. I'm definitely going to self-publish. You know, I wanted to, and there's some things, I'm super attached to my protagonist. I feel very strongly about her, and I was afraid some marketing choices would be made that would conflict with her character, just to give it a cover maybe that would attract a broader audience. And so yeah, I decided to self-publish, because then now I have control over how many books in the series can be published, and I retain all creative rights for my characters and the books themselves. So that's why I ended up going with that. Rejection and stubbornness.
Well, I think that's a really important kind of story for other people to hear too, that like, I think a lot of people still think of the self-publishing world as kind of a second or last resort for people who can't get published. And yes, maybe like, you know, you try to get self-published first sometimes, but it's not only because it's a second resort. It is also allows you, as you discovered, like a lot more freedom. It allows you to keep more of your money. It allows you to make your own decisions. And so it's really important to hear stories like that of people choosing to go this path for these reasons.
Yeah. And I mean, I did a lot of research because this is who I am. I did tons of research about self-publishing, reading at it from every angle. And there are actually a lot of traditional authors that have been in the traditional space for a long time that are starting to move towards self-publishing because they do retain more of their rights of their work and they're getting paid better. So.
Yeah. So PSA for readers, if you see a book that is self-published, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was just rejected from all the publishers, and so the author self-published it.
Right.
And we'll be seeing more and more, I think, of self-published authors. So, I mean, mine's self-published.
It's very exciting.
So.
Yeah, especially if you're a genre reader, it's very exciting because through the traditional space, there are 4 publishing houses that are deciding what genres are going to be available to the public to read. And that all depends on, that all depends on the dollar signs for them and what's trending. Well, if you're a genre reader and you're like, I like horror, I like rom-com, rom-com always do it, right? Romance, they'll always have a place in the market. But if you get into more niche kind of subgenres and you're a reader in that genre, you could be sitting around twiddling your thumbs for a while because there won't be anything coming out of the big houses if it isn't trending for them.
Yeah, and to that point, and we'll get off this train in a second, but even romance writers, I think, are moving toward self-publishing because it's so much faster too.
Yes.
And romance readers are voracious. Like they want the next book and the next book and the next book. And when you self-publish, you can do that. I mean, without sacrificing quality, if you can write quickly, you can publish so much faster on your own than you would have to wait for a big publisher to probably 1 book a year, maybe. I don't know. I'm not an expert, so don't quote me.
No, I think that's, no, I think it is like about a book a year.
Yeah. So not to, diminish the traditionally published world. There are still plenty of traditionally published writers I read and love.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But there's going to be a shift, I think, and readers should know that. But and not just to make it all smell like, roses, the self-publishing path. So what were some of the biggest challenges you kind of have hit along the way in self-publishing, and how did you overcome some of them?
Oh my gosh. There's so much to do when you self-publish.
As we just laugh and
you're laughing because I feel like you're the lost girl is also out in you have experienced it firsthand. There is so much to do because you are the writer. First you write the story, right? And you're like, oh, I'll put it in Word and put it on Amazon. No, there's so much. I think, and also I want to try to, so as you mentioned, self-publishing still has a little bit of a stigma to it where people think of it as like, oh, the second choice or something like that. So when you are self-publishing, you're fighting against that. And it was challenging for me to be confident that I had researched everything to make sure everything was right and correct. And just like a traditionally published book, everything from purchasing your ISBNs and going through the editing process like the book would go through at a traditional house, and revising and revising and editing and revising and editing and revising again. And, making sure that cover is not necessarily what you want, but something you think that will appeal to your reader. And then revising again your book. I think it was my just being confident that I had all my ducks in the row instead of at the club or something. I just it's just it felt overwhelming at times, I guess. And so I just made a list as I read and connected with other writers like yourself, exchanged information, and just did what I had to do to get stuff done. And one thing that I ran into, a bit of a snag, was finances. So I ended up running a Kickstarter campaign, and that was a really great fundraising tool for me as a writer.
Yeah, I feel like we could probably do a whole other video on just picking your brain about Kickstarter, but yeah, you had a very successful Kickstarter campaign. You were Kickstarter, what was the award you got?
Oh, the Projects We Love. Yeah.
Projects We Love from Kickstarter, fully funded.
Yeah.
Stretch goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, audiobook for the stretch goal. We were able to meet, so that's she's starting working on it in October. I believe the audiobook's gonna arrive in November.
Yeah. So if for other self-published authors out there, Kickstarter is hard work. I think you would agree, but an option. Like I said, we could do a whole video on this, but like, what's one piece of advice you would give to somebody like thinking about starting a Kickstarter, or how that made it so successful for you, you think?
Right. Well, I have one really quick one. Keep your rewards simple. And then the second one is, the big one is crafting your story about your project. I think because people on Kickstarter come to sponsor or to back creativity, they want to invest in creativity. And so they are an audience that, some people will go to the bookstore and pick up a book, which is fine, right? And read it. I love this book. Great job, author. On to the next. They don't care how the author got to that point. But on Kickstarter, there is an audience that specifically wants to know your thought process and why you're creating something. So I think that really helped.
Yeah. So you hit some challenges on the road to publication, some physical, or I guess tactile, logistical challenges, but also some mental challenges maybe. How did you kind of, when you hit these challenges, either in publishing process, writing, anything like that, what do you do when you get stuck and don't want to keep going? I guess is my short way of
right. No, question. I get it. Yeah. Well, I cry, so I'm a cry. I cry. But no, but beyond that, I am very fortunate to have a supportive husband. He's my first reader, so I have my allotment of like breakdowns a month. But no, all the joking aside, it really helps to have a network of people who love and support you, but then also other writers. I think is very important. And I have a critique partner that I met through, I think it was a Twitter event or something, that we've known each other for a few years now, just by swapping manuscripts and critiquing each other's work. And we now have a very close friendship. And just yesterday, I was having problems with a part in my story, and I'm like, this is awful, because I'm finishing my edit of book 2 to get to copy editing. And I just was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is awful. No one's going to like this and everyone will hate it. It's crap, you know? And so I messaged him and, you know, sent him a gif of someone just like crawling into their bed and crying. And he's like, okay, what's going on? Tell me how I can help. And just so, and because he writes as well, he can relate to a lot of, I think that most, you know, I think a lot of writers run into doubting themselves and feeling lost, maybe in edits, looking at the story too long, so you don't know where you are anymore. And just having a writing community or a critique partner or a few writer friends to talk to about it, just even in a chat and be like, okay, we had our cry, let's dust ourselves off, we have a game plan, now we're going to start again.
Perfect. The cry is good. You just have to do it and then keep going.
Go. Like, cry, acknowledge you're having feelings, and then get back to the edit.
Put the feelings in the story. Write it all out.
Write it out. That's a great. Actually, that's a great solution. Yeah.
You might have to cut it out later, but. So how do you?
Why is he crying all the time? Oh,
too much. What do you do then when you hit? And then we will talk what's next for you and where people can find you. But what do you do to get out of writer's block? Do you have any tools for, like, so that kind of sounds like the support system that you need when you're hitting mental blocks. Do you have anything you do when you hit like the actual writing blocks and you just can't think of what you want to say or don't know where the character's going or anything like that?
Yeah. So I do a few things. Sometimes I completely switch what I'm writing. And I really like short fiction or flash fiction for this, is to write something just completely for the fun of it that's completely different. Sometimes that helps jog things loose. And then I also garden. I'm a gardener. And so I go out and weed, but I think it's that repetitive motion, like you hear people talk about, oh, I had the greatest idea in the shower or something. It's like, or doing the dishes or something. It's going and getting away from the keyboard and just letting your mind wander and kind of piece through what you're thinking about. Going for walks is a great one for me. Yeah, I think Stephen King says, what I think on writing, I say it takes like an hour walk every single day just to let his brain tumble things in there while he's out walking. Mm-hmm. So those have worked best for me so far.
Awesome. And so you fought through it. Now Alex is out in the world. Where can people purchase the book, Fear the Wolf, and where can they find you to learn more about you and what's coming up next?
Sure. The ebook is available on Amazon, and then the paperback or hardcover book is available in most bookstores. If you go and order it, if you're local to West Michigan, Books and Mortar, it's a really nice indie bookstore that will be carrying it. My website is stephaniegilmour.com, and then I'm also on Facebook as author Stefanie Gilmour, and then Instagram at Stef Gilmour. And then the audiobook, should be coming out in November. So I'll announce that. If you sign up for my newsletter, it's really the best way I can let you know what's going on in my world. And then hopefully we're shooting for end of January for book 2. So.
Yay. So exciting. So if you go out and get the book now and you love it, you'll be able to get more. Very soon.
Yeah.
And to end our chat here, I'll give you 2 choices. What is either the best piece of writing advice you've ever received, or what advice would you have for someone thinking about kind of going down the same path?
As writing,
self-publishing, I guess.
Self-publishing, yeah.
Yeah. You pick one or the other or both.
right? I think it's going to have to be the finding your writing community. I think that's really, really important for creatives to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. So, and writing can be lonely sometimes because it's just you and the keyboard, and well, you have all those people in your head that are yelling at you, you're writing stories, writing stories with them. But finding, whether it's a writing group or like a time that you go and meet with people and discuss your writing, or a critique partner, other writers, finding other writers and having those people, I think is really important.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. Hopefully your words inspire other people to go out and find their community, and your story helps them go fight for their creativity. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, warriors, for watching.
Thank you.